Morning, everybody. This is the morning crew. I'm not sure which group I'm in, but I want to thank Woody and the whole crew. They've been absolutely amazing, and I think the most beautiful part of it is celebrating all the people and the community. So super honored to be here. So talking about entrepreneurship is something about startup things and beginnings and origins. So I want to talk a little bit about how those defining moments are really important. And I think a lot of us are here because of the big gap that we all feel, which for me is maybe best expressed as the incredible potential of all of us vis-a-vis the reality that a lot of us observe around the state of things. So we've got to work pretty hard to get there, and I think today is all about the language of action. So you're not going to get a lot of heavy thoughts from me. You're going to kind of get more of a plain doer's profile. I do want to dedicate my presentation to all of the entrepreneurs that are going to be presenting later in the day. And I think they're always capable of self-identifying because every mistake is just another opportunity, is kind of the frame of mind. There is a quote I wanted to share by Robert Jarvik. Entrepreneurial visionaries just have a poorly developed sense of fear and no concept of the odds against them. But there's another aspect to entrepreneurship which is more related to leadership, and that is leadership can only happen when we inhabit ourselves. And if anything, you always hear stories about entrepreneurs and, oh, you know so-and-so, he's just, that way. And so I even regard Woody as an entrepreneur. I think he's a kind of an entrepreneur of the verbal world. And the fact that he's able to weave poetry into the language of the soil and talk about business and money at the same time, I think is a remarkable piece of jujitsu. So I'm here to share my story. Right now, my story is tied in with that of Queen Calafia. Queen Calafia was a black Amazonian princess who became, in the minds of the greedy Spanish, everything that symbolized the land of California. Now, they had no idea where California was. They were just taking everything in its way. So this concept of a feminine guardian of abundance was, I thought, an intriguing one. And besides, most Californians didn't understand where their state came from, what it was named after. So I kind of felt a duty to share that story. The bounty of California is a big part of Calafia Farms. And the title of my talk here, Unlikely Bedfellows, is really about looking and breaking down the us and them in the food system. So being a little older in my own pathway, I started Odwalla in 1980. And so I've been doing it for a while. I went through a health crisis a few years ago. I had a liver transplant during the first year of my startup of this new company. So when I made it through that, I kind of felt I had a responsibility to utilize every aspect of what I knew. So I started a series of dialogues with some of the largest people in the food industry and just started trying to have a conversation about what was in the way between them doing things a little differently and the way things could be done. So Calafia Farms is kind of a result of that conversation, and I'll share some details about how that came to be. But California itself is an inspiration for me. So it's really kind of a story about regionalism. And I was struck by, when I look back into the archives of where I've lived a lot of my life in the Santa Cruz Mountains, this was a depiction of, before the Spanish came, the typical garb of the period. So I kind of felt the hat was the least thing I could do to, get close to that decor. When I started Odwalla, I probably looked a lot like that. We started in a little shed in the back of our house. It was the wood shed where I unsuccessfully tried to become a saxophonist, but anyway, turned it into an orange juice factory. This is my first invoice, $11.20. Squeezed one box of oranges, next day 2, next day 4, next day 8. Went on like that. Didn't always double. Went through a lot of fortunes and misfortunes, became a public company. Probably did about 12 rounds of financing. Had a lot of venture capital, private equity, all that. Big giant recall. Long story, but anyway, a lot of people ask me why you want to do it again. Well, it was fun having your own trucks on the road. It's a sort of a way to identify with the world of commerce, which is kind of a fun thing. But I came from the land of fruit and nuts, so, sort of doomed to do that again. So anyway, scaling it up became sort of an interest. And I got a call one day from a farmer named Bern Evans in the Central Valley, California. And Bern, he's one of the largest farmers in California, 5 different crops. He's, in the top 3, 35,000 acres in the Central Valley, citrus, table grapes, tomatoes, so on. And he said, hey, I got a lot of byproduct that, really isn't getting much value. And do you think there's a business that could be made out of that? So we started talking, and they had a unique ability, and that was the ability to get ripe fruit to the stores all over the country through a very powerful logistics system. And I started thinking about, because I was obsessed with antioxidants from, being, you can just kind of move away from the thing there. I was obsessed with the idea that for optimum health, we really need fresh vitamins every day. And after having to pasteurize Odwalla juices, I really lost my enamorment of spreading that kind of product. So I was looking at what they were really doing, which was bringing high quality, critical micronutrients to people in their original form. And children in particular are the ones that really need that, and we all playing these games with how to get children to, have fun and get excited about fruits and vegetables. So I've been helping them brand the produce that they make. Probably their most successful brand, which was developed before I got there, is called Cuties. So they're the largest maker and seller of the mandarin and Spanish clementine in the United States. And this year we were able to successfully sell McDonald's on the idea that they could include, instead of what they used to have in a Happy Meal, which really might not have been optimal, a little cutie in every Happy Meal. So starting this month, we're going to be seeing that. So that's it's pretty cool. It's a little piece of, absolute fresh, most unprocessed thing you can have. So unwrap the sweetness and get your vitamin C, and it's really something that's pretty fun. Cuties is a brand, and it's really, part of my story is how to build brands to tell a story and how to get the storytelling to do the work for you. So we obviously had to get juice into the picture. So we had a barn raising in the Central Valley. We formed that concrete out of local soil on the site and raised the walls after we formed the walls there. It was kind of fun. Built a nice little facility, about 50,000 square feet. put in some tanks to hold hopefully something I could learn how to sell. When we started this, I had no idea what we were going to make. We built this thing from ground up to operation in 9 months. So pretty proud of that. So I call it a fruit refinery. Just a little bit of a different concept, you know. I mean, take that old oil picture, turn it upside down, biological, you know, little integrity in it, and try to just find a happy home for every single thing that comes out of that fruit. And so we start to optimize the specialty crops of California. We're the only yuzu processor in the state of California. We like to work with Meyer lemons. We're trying to popularize the things that the smaller growers can get to market as well. This is probably my favorite product. This is a cold-pressed oil that comes straight out of the mandarin. And it's completely unprocessed, which in the oil and fragrance industry, you just can't get that because it's all fractionated. So this is just a pure essence of the skin of the fruit. We put in a lot of sustainability. I call it pragmatics. These things are things probably everybody should do, but probably the most interesting thing was just taking a page from industrial ecology and utilizing the waste product of the plants adjacent to us. We were able to combine our effluent chemistry, analyze it, and solve a lot of problems for both the adjacent plants and our plant, and do 100% land application along with all our water recycling programs. So everything is used, reused continually, and we're surrounded by our own crops, so it goes back into the crop itself. So it's kind of cool to see it all physically when you're there. We're also surrounded by almond groves, so we got into doing things related to almonds. This is our current package. The design disruption was really about the fastest way I could figure out how to not spend on marketing and still make an impact on the shelf. All the pictures, by the way, of the products are taken by our consumers. So these are things that are sent to us by social media, except for this shot of our latest product. And it's really fun when your latest product becomes your best product. Thanks to Starbucks, PSL is a great seller for us. We're trying to disrupt the categories that we go into by analyzing the most offensive products on the market and trying to find an all-natural solution. So Coffee Mate, coffee creamers are one of the most deadly chemical soups known to man. And the problem is that many people think that it's an okay product because they just put a little bit in every day. Now, does that sound familiar as a way to die early? So we were able to actually just cream the actual nuts and create a coffee creamer that's literally made from the cream of the nut. So part of what I want to share with other entrepreneurs is about how to create success by disrupting and recognizing, I think, the incredible tipping point that we're really at in terms of what's been called the consumer, but it's just really people. The net is that the rates of adoption are changing. I mean, this is our particular field in which we take plant-based milks. And the conversion from GMO soy into healthy alternatives like almond milk are really happening at a rate that's unheard of. I mean, even soy milk went relatively fast over about a 10-year period. This has happened in a 3-year period in almond milk where it came from, you know, just $100 million to nearly $1 billion in 3 years. That consumer, we call it a her, just like it's fun to have a company that's a her. It's, you guys are that consumer, and whether you're that age or not, you're kind of that young at heart, young at mind, flexible-minded person. And that person, when you're building a product, if you aim at that core, you will get all of the people in society that feel that way regardless of age. So it's not really about demographics. This is just a little flavor for how that works when you build a a company that's really co-created by your customer, and that's a big message I wanted to share. It's a really incredible adventure. You know, all these shots again are from people who love our product. You know, I love this one. You know, the punchline is her husband, I'm pretty sure he loves your almond milk more than he loves me. You know, obviously tongue in cheek, but pretty funny. This is, you know, I mean, every once in a while you got to take in some good feedback. So you mad geniuses, delicious liquid concoction sorcerers, that gets me going. We were able to sell Walmart on the idea that they should have a vegan alternative. So for the first time we made eggnog, our holiday nog, was last year, and we gave it to Whole Foods as an exclusive. This year, it's in every single Walmart. So that, you know, Whole Foods isn't real happy about that, but hey, I gave them the exclusive for the first year. So incubator channels are awesome. Avoiding channel conflict is a big deal for entrepreneurs, but it's all about balance. It's all about playing with it. This is one of my favorite quotes. You know, when you know, you have to understand the mind of an entrepreneur and what drives us. I mean, that's the kind of comment that, you know, all the other stuff makes it worth it. So really, you know, the core of my talk is about how to create a culture of action in which we can co-create a marketplace of the future. I guess that's how I put it. And it's really possible because that marketplace doesn't just exist in the future, it exists now. The current state is that the infrastructure of industry, in the food industry in particular, as it's built itself into an industry, is really way, way, way behind where the consumer is. And that is just a world of opportunity that I want to give the utmost encouragement to the entrepreneurs here so that they can step into that opportunity with a lot of confidence. So building these meaning-based, I call them meaning-based businesses, is a really core practice for the modern true entrepreneur. And there's a lot of art to it. It's not a checklist. It's about being authentic and inhabiting yourself first, and then building a culture in which the whole team and the community around you inhabits itself. And that kind of interpenetration of the joy and the creativity of actually, you know, having the people who buy the product and support the product and the supply chain, which in our case, I've been very fortunate to partner with the farmers themselves. So the core thing that, you know, I'm trying to do at a scale that I want to encourage everybody to think about is that when you look at the value chain and you start to compress it by building organizations that enfold what used to be transactional space, and then you make that a common space, and all of a sudden you cut out all these margins that have to be included in that transfer cost. And when you do that through partnership, you build a common equity. And that common equity builds values which used to go to Wall Street and now can go back on the farm. And that's what I'm, you know, trying to do here. Thank you. Lastly, you know, there's a lot of issues. I don't know, do I have another slide? With large-scale agriculture, we're really talking about trying to make a transition from the cultures of extraction into the cultures of ecology. And the only way I've been able to do that successfully is just through a lot of conversations and not a lot of polemic. And the polemic is what has held back the real common language formation that's necessary to get this accomplished at scale. And I really came to this idea because I was asked to chair a committee for Roots of Change in California, which is a nonprofit initiative that was initiated by the Columbia Foundation. And they wanted to form an industry council. And there were all these foundations involved and a lot of people meaning extreme amounts of good, you know, and lots of good agenda. But when calling some of the larger people in the industry in terms of the food production industry in California, there was a huge gap that they would just constantly run up to in the rhetoric. And so eliminating all that rhetoric and just sitting down and talking about common interests like how do we support the pollinators so that the pollinator cost component for the almond farmer, for example, can be something that's a manageable cost. So those, you know, when you look at the pragmatics of it, there is so much common ground once all the language drops down to real basic levels and we get into an inquiry modality. So that dynamic I've found to be extremely full of opportunity. And I'm having a really interesting time talking to some of the largest dairies, for example, about the decline of dairy, the attitude of new generations around animal factory production, and what the milks of the future, for example, might look like. So in thinking through all these different issues, I've kind of come up with sort of our own mission statement, which is more of a question. It's like, how do we build the food and beverage companies of the future that are capable of feeding the world, that are capable of supplying that transitional scale between the mass industrial system and the backyard growing that we all realize is the epitome of getting freshness into our and nourishment. So in just a few short years, we've become the fastest growing natural beverage company in the United States, which doesn't say much about scale. It's really a very small swimming pool, but it's a start. And I think it's something that by combining this ownership analysis and looking at the supply chain, which is a really hard piece of analysis, but when you think it through, and if everyone does that, try to find some unlikely bedfellows, and I think we'll have a lot of growing things to share. Thank you very much.